Right, lunchtime panel. I hope you can at least hear us and hopefully see some of us. We're going to discuss an interesting topic, and that will be compensation and salary negotiation. I think there is a lot for all of us to actually learn about. And today I have the honor to host an amazing panel with me here. So I will just go and introduce everybody, and then lunchtime. Okay, I think, does it work now? Sorry about the technical difficulties. So obviously all new for us. Hopefully you can hear me now. And I was about to introducing my panelists. So uh, okay, I think it works now. Great. Okay. Anna Margarita Medina is a counts engineer in Gremlin and advocate for mental health and diversity. Hi, Anna.
Hi there, nice to meet everyone.
Okay. Kat Cosgrove, developer advocate, JFrog, diversity champion. Hi, Kat.
Hello.
Karen Cudlin, author of Better Allies, leadership coach and inclusion advocate. Hi, Karen.
Hi everyone, nice to be here.
And last but not least, Thao Nguyen Lee, operations partner at Blockstack. Hi, Thao Nguyen. I'm monitoring the questions in the main room chat, so if you want to ask something or contribute to the discussion, please do. Here is a first great question: where can I find the Twitter handles of the folks on the panel? We will make sure to actually post the Twitter handles right here in the chat in a second. But let's get to the questions. We have some very interesting questions to discuss. And the first I would like to ask is a very generic and basic one, but I think it will give us a kind of a nice introduction into the topic and take us to more advanced stuff. I think my first question will be how to deal with negotiation part in any during the hiring process. Probably now it's not the best time to look for a job, as we all realize, but maybe for someone it is. But obviously this will be over. We will have new opportunities. And I think when we are getting hired, this question will come up at some point of time. And there are some interesting decisions that people need to make. So if any of you have any ideas about how to go about it, especially obviously when we're talking about diversity, inclusion, and underrepresented minorities perspective, that might have some special tips and tricks, that will be very appreciated. So go ahead, whoever wants to chime in.
A long time ago, I was given the advice to never be the first person to give a number in salary negotiations. And the person who gave me that advice, I'm pretty sure, was giving me that advice to use like just as a negotiation tactic, force them to make the offer first so you can argue them up or down from there instead of maybe accidentally lowballing yourself. And that's good advice, but it's also good advice, I think, for at least for women specifically, because we typically want to take up less space, and we're raised to be often raised to be less demanding, and it's easier to not give a number first So it's both easier and it puts you in a better negotiating position. It's always worked for me, at least.
Hi everyone, Tian here from Blockstack. I can go next. Let me know if anyone is having trouble hearing me. But usually how I like to approach situations where I'm asking for something, whether it's salary or whether it's for a promotion, is coming from a place of confidence and gratitude. Confidence in terms of that I have prepared on what I've accomplished, and I usually tell other people as well, come from a place where you've prepared the things that you've accomplished, the things that you've worked on, how well you've done it. And then with that kind of confidence, coming from a place of gratitude instead of like an entitlement of like, I deserve this, I should have this. Instead, from a place of gratitude, it's that, you know, I'm so glad to have this opportunity. And then it's been so fun working on XYZ project. And it's also coming from a place to remind them that you've done something well, such as, you know, I'm so glad that you, if I'm speaking with my manager, I'm so glad that you thought the last project went really well. So coming from that place, both, it gives you a sense of confidence, and it also makes the other people feel a little bit more like, oh, this is not one of those aggressive kind of conversation, but this is an assertive, this person is assertive, asking for what they want and asking for, but coming from that place of like, this is not going to be a confrontational kind of experience. It's more of like, this is a conversation and this person has prepared.
This is Karen. I'll go next. I also recommend really doing your research. Research in terms of not just looking on Glassdoor or other websites, which there are so many crowdsourced websites out there with salary information based on geography, based on job title, and leveling and so forth. Do that research, but then also make sure you're asking people about their compensation packages. This is the websites out there, the crowdsourced stuff is helpful, but it's not end all and be all. And ideally, you will have someone that you know at that company that you are applying to, or in a very similar company, who can be confident enough with where they are standing that they would share their salary data, maybe even share salary bands if they have access to that. All of this is great information as you think about what you're worth and what you should be asking for after. And I love Kat's advice of not making that first move, but once you start the whole negotiation process, really understanding your worth. And especially not tying that to what you make today, because, well, who knows what life is going to look like moving forward. But in the past, we as women, and probably members of other underrepresented groups, we haven't asked for what we really should be making and what our worth is. And so we might have underballed ourselves years and years ago, and that only has a compounding effect on what we think we might be worth. So it's better to really do the research, understand what other people are making, and calibrate yourself that way. And I'll just say, for people who are in the panel who aren't members of an underrepresented group, please consider sharing your salary with people around you who might really benefit from knowing what you earn. It's a little weird, especially in some cultures, to be sharing and talking about money, but I think it's super helpful for people to have that insight.
Hi there, this is Anna, and I'll share my advice next. A lot of it piggybacks off the great advice we've heard of like not sharing what you think you're worth, but letting them define what their salary band is. For me, one of the best things that I've learned through my last two roles is that seek out the network of engineers around you and ask for what they're making, what are their experience levels, where they went to school, projects that they've worked on. And that way you can actually assess yourself into, when you're looking at the offers, into what you should actually be taking. So for me, that meant when I was an intern trying to get promoted to full-time at my last organization, it was like asking all these entry-level engineers, like, what are your salary bands? How much did you get for stock? And then I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay with that company. So I went outside the company, I got other offers, and I was able to come to my internship place where I was working and be like, I have other offers from other companies. If I don't get my promotion to full-time, I am going to be going out the door and joining another organization. And that was able to speed up the negotiation process for me. And then one of the things that I wish I would have actually had more candid conversations was actually stock. So you want to make sure that you're looking at your whole package. For when I was doing negotiating, I was strictly looking at the money, the salary part of it. And I was able to know that as a Latina in tech, I was getting the highest band that I could, but I didn't do the same for stock. And that's something that some organizations, they'll give you the same salary as other male white colleagues in your organization, but the stock might not be the same. So make sure to seek out to your network. If you're starting just out in tech, make sure to reach out to folks like us in the panel that can actually help you find some people in your countries that can share a little bit more of the salaries, and that way you can know your worth.
Thank you all very much. That was really awesome, and I wanted maybe just to piggyback on some of things that were said some times ago on
Thank
tweet,
you all very
on
much.
Twitter. That was this conversation about sharing the salaries and everything. I think it started from a very good place, but it turns out that Twitter probably not the best platform to discuss all that, because obviously people are from different backgrounds, different economic situations, and obviously where people complain how underpaid they are with numbers, other people from Africa, for example, didn't share this exact incentive, and it didn't work very well. But more intimate discussions inside the organization with colleagues obviously make perfect sense. Another thing that I wanted to mention and hear your opinion about is shopping around, if you wish, in air quotes. I don't think my video works, so I just made an air quotes around it. And that going to interviews in order to get some kind of perspective of what your worth is, what your capabilities are, what exists on the market, even if you don't really intend to take the job offers that you apply to get in the interviews. I know, for example, from my white privileged male perspective, that it's, of course, why not? It's not a big deal. But I also hear a lot of other folks kind of feel not very good about it, or I shouldn't go, the requirements are not perfect for me, I don't want to waste their time, and all this kind of stuff. And I really wanted to know which approach is right in your perspective, and if going shopping around makes sense.
Well, this is Karen. I'll say something here. I think that having competitive offers puts you in an amazing position to negotiate for the job that you really want to take and what that compensation package should be. That said, interviewing takes a lot of time, and not everyone has that energy, that ability, that time to just invest in getting the whole interview process started, landing the interviews, and actually going through with it. So I think you need to ask yourself, how much time can you invest? How much energy do you have? How much bandwidth can you actually apply to your job search? And first of all, make sure that that is a good workload for you. But secondly, as you approach each of these jobs, I think about my experience. Every time I've interviewed somewhere, I've gotten excited about joining that organization. And I would never want to be showing up with just like, I'm only doing this to get a competitive offer. I think our head should be in the game. I think we should be excited about the jobs that we are interviewing for. Even though we might have a favorite, we should be excited about each group we're talking to so that we show up our best and hopefully get great offers that allow us to look at a handful of them and make trade-offs and use those during the negotiation process.
I think it kind of depends on where you are in your career as well. Like early on in your career, when you're like just trying to get a foothold, especially if you came like out of a boot camp or you are like literally a brand new CS grad, you're probably interviewing at a few different places at a time. And I wouldn't say that you should like specifically interview with the company just to get a competing offer. But if you have more than one offer, I would not hesitate to leverage that. Later in your career, when you're maybe doing less actually seeking out a new job and doing more getting poached, then maybe you take an interview if you feel like they'll get to the offer phase really, really quickly just to leverage it against somebody else. I've heard of a lot of people doing that with Microsoft and Amazon in Seattle. There's a rumor floating around on Blind that Microsoft will offer you considerably more money if you have a competing offer from Amazon versus a competing offer from somewhere else. I don't know if that's true, but I don't know. I probably would not personally go to an interview just to get a competing offer to leverage. But if I had a competing offer, I would use it.
I think I can speak a little bit on that. I touched base that me getting a competing offer like helped me expedite the process, and I think in situations like that it really makes sense. So I think for entry mid-level career, it's a good place to do it. Of course, as you get more advanced, you're more likely to get poached. Therefore, the situation's a little bit different. But if you do have those offers, leverage them. It's a good way to know what other opportunities you could be making. But I will say that choosing your next role shouldn't just be about the amount of money that they're giving you, the amount of stock that they're giving you. It should be about how you feel about the company's mission, the founders, where the product is headed. And I know that I've had the privilege to take offers with a lot less money just because I like the team a lot more. And that's something that I had to examine within myself and reflect that those are things I valued more than a few extra $1,000 would do for me. So it's something that you need to think a little bit more about on case by case scenario.
Hey everyone, I was thinking that what I do and what I advise everyone to do is to make a list of priorities when you're looking for a job. What are the things that are important to you, and sort of ranking them in terms of, let's assign like a score point of like 10. If you have like 4 items that are priorities, then like, maybe the first item is like 5 points and then the second takes like, 2 points or something like that. And then based on that, and then based on the offer, make your decision that way. Because at the end of the day, maybe if money is your most important, then yes, you should absolutely optimize for whichever job is going to pay you the most. But otherwise, if you have an opportunity that maybe does not pay as well as another opportunity, but if money was like maybe the 3rd or 4th item on your priority list, has everything else, or it has the top 3 priorities for you, then I would highly optimize for that. So to go back to my answer earlier, is that with all of this, sort of get to know yourself and prepare who you are, what you want, and your priorities, and then aligning that with the job that you want and aligning that with like what you're asking for.
This is great. Thank you so much for those tips. Before we get to the next topic, that will be how do we start the promotion negotiation, or how can we sell up ourselves to promotion? Before that, we mentioned something that I wanted a little bit ask you to talk a little bit more about. That will be the stocks and the options. So we mentioned that it's definitely a part of the compensation that shouldn't be overlooked. We shouldn't only talk about the salary itself. How do you make sense of those? It's a pretty complicated topic. I don't think any of us is an expert, or not a lot of us are experts. how do you make sense those and make sure that you are not overlooking this important part of the compensation?
Honestly, I cheated on that one with my current job, and my grandfather is a financial advisor, so I just asked him to look at my contract because it's not something that I know enough about to tell whether or not I am making a good decision or if I should be negotiating for more or whether this is actually worth anything. So I didn't want to risk it. So I went to a professional. And if I didn't have a family member who was a professional in the field, I probably would have hired somebody. Currently, the CPA firm I use has a financial advisor on staff, and I pay him to help me make decisions about this. It's not worth gambling on something that could potentially be a ton of money being left on the table for me to try to figure it out myself personally.
Anyone else have advice on the stock options, making sense of all this? All right, so I would probably like summarize of get advice, right? Get ask someone who knows about it, and even if you need to pay for this advice, definitely do it because it potentially a lot of money. Okay, now let's talk about promotion. And I think first thing before we actually get to negotiate a promotion is how do we even get on the list? How we are getting lined up for promotion? How can we help it? And without pushing too much, because a lot of us, especially the introverts, feel very uncomfortable talking about what they are doing and sharing their achievements. But this is critical for getting in line for promotion. How do we do that?
So this is Karen. I'll share some advice that I give a lot of my coaching clients. I do leadership coaching primarily for women who work in tech. And so many of us early in our career, we are focused on, as we, for example, write our self-appraisals or talk to our manager about our work, we focus on the work we do. Like, this is how many bugs I've fixed. This is how the new processes I've put in place for incident response or whatever. We focus on the work. And instead, the important thing is to focus on the impact of your work. What did you do? How did you help contribute to larger goals when you fixed all those bugs or when you created that new incident response process? What did you impact in terms of the business objectives? So it's important to really understand and ask questions if you don't, but understand how your work ties into the larger things that are being tracked by the company, and be able, as you think about your next promotion, is talk about what you do in terms of, I help our team, I help my company achieve this revenue, achieve this target, go after this competitive market, whatever that might be. So it's really important to focus on the impact of our work to set ourselves up for that promotion. Secondly, I'll just say every company's promotion process is going to be different. So you really have to ask questions about, what is the process here? What is the next step? What do I need to demonstrate in order to be considered? How do I need to get on people's radar? What is the whole process? So ask those questions and make sure you're clear about those in your mind, and then you can start planning for how to get there.
That was so great, Karen. I'm going to add to that. I loved everything about your answer. That was really cool. I'm just going to add a little bit to that, in that if you are not setting up the conversations with your manager at least twice a year, I mean, I would probably ask for more. I hope that you are doing once a month one-on-ones with your manager. But to have conversations about promotions or anything like that, I would say, especially promotion or where you are in your career, I would highly recommend setting up at least a twice a year conversation with your manager to find out where you are at, where you are in this sort of like, if your company has a competency matrix, it would be really helpful to see that, let's say, as a software engineering 1, there's a software engineering 2 or 3 or 4 and so forth. If your organization does not have that set up yet, it would be really helpful to ask your manager, okay, so where's the potential of where you can go from here? Because it would not be fair for you or for the organization for you to work on something that you don't know where the destination is and you don't know what you're working for. I also want to reiterate the point that I made earlier, being prepared and getting feedback during the year in between these twice-a-year conversations, so that whenever you do have these conversations with your manager, you're checking in, but no information should be a surprise to you on your performance during the past 6 months. Is what I would add. Let's see, the other notes is that, so just to recap, keep asking for feedback, have the conversation twice a year to evaluate where you are in terms of where the company competency matrix is and where is the potential for you to go. I would add to what Karen said.
I'm just going to jump in and add to what Tien said too, in that those competency matrices are so critical. They're excellent tools. And what I learned from someone who's smarter than me is this recommendation of actually asking your manager to take the competency matrix for your level and the next level up and color code it. Sort of red, yellow, green. Red are the things you haven't yet demonstrated or mastered. Yellow, you're showing some promise or you're working towards that. You still need some time working on it. Green, you've got it. You've nailed it. It's perfect. You've demonstrated competency there. Have your manager do that, and then you do the same activity separately. Red, yellow, green, how you evaluate yourself on all the different competencies of your current level and the next level up. And then it provides great fodder for a conversation between you and your manager of, are you aligned of what the work is that you're doing, how you're seeing the competencies based on that matrix, what needs to happen next. It's an excellent approach for actually having that conversation of, I think I should be here, what do you think?
This probably doesn't apply to everyone, but just to add to what Karen said, I have a tendency to like take on more and more job duties. And that's kind of natural. Like, it happens at startups. It happens at companies that are a little bit more lean, anything that's early stage. You end up wearing multiple hats, right? But you have to keep an eye on how much extra you're taking on, and watch for when you're going like way above and beyond your job duties, your like actual job description, and keep that in mind when you do have a one-on-one with your manager, because it is something you can leverage if you're doing like a whole other job in addition to your actual job duties.
Great. Thank you all for this advice. And I think the next step, once you kind of put yourself up to promotion, will be the promotion negotiation itself, or maybe the salary part of it, or that's kind of, or compensation. That's kind of the topic of our panel. So I wonder how that works. I guess it's different from company to company. There are some with fixed brackets for different levels. There are some which are more open for negotiation. And I guess the techniques that you apply for negotiation during the promotion is different than the techniques you apply in negotiation during hiring. I wondered if you have any advice on those.
This is Karen. I'll jump in. So I'll share a story. At one point, and this goes back a few years, I was working for a software company and I was at the senior director level. I was being promoted to vice president. Super exciting. It was a conversation. I knew it was coming. And I had also, and this goes back, might be 10 years now, but I had heard all of this research of women don't ask, women don't negotiate. I'm like, I'm going to negotiate. So I decided I was going to ask a lot of people at my company who were already at the VP level, who had recently been promoted to the VP level. I decided to ask them, like, did you negotiate? Because I was just curious, like, how many of the guys, it was mostly guys I was asking, how many of them negotiated their promotion? Every single person I talked to said, I didn't negotiate, I just took what they said. And some of that is a lot of trust that the company is compensating the executive team well. And certainly that was the case. It was a great compensation package. But that said, I didn't want to be a statistic of one of those women who never asked and never got, was never negotiated. So I took an approach of simply asking the HR person, the people ops person I was working with to, hey, could you please just take a look at the overall compensation for people at this level that I'm about to join. And I'd like to know where I calibrate, what you're offering me, where that calibrates in this range, because I don't want to be at the bottom. And the person did that. It was anonymous data, but I was able to then see where I came in on the range, and I felt comfortable with that. So I didn't end up negotiating, but I felt very comfortable with the salary they offered me at that promotion. I don't know. I hope that's helpful.
Oh, definitely is helpful. And you know what? I think I agree with you. Negotiation during the promotion is something probably rare because you are inside the company. You are expected to trust what the company does for you. And I can add to your database, me personally, I never negotiated during the promotion. I always trusted my managers to just do the right thing by me. So yeah, it's probably somehow different, but knowing the information and knowing that you are not being screwed over is important. Anyone have any other ideas on this topic, or?
Yeah, I was going to add something actually. I was going to add that, I recently spoke to a woman and I was coaching where she just in this 1 year had her company give her 3 different raises because she kept coming to them and wanting to have a conversation on a promotion and a raise. And these 3 times before they have the conversations or before she had a chance to talk to them and I present her case of the things that she's prepared for, they just kind of gave this to her. In a way, it takes the agency and the power away from her to even ask for the number that she wants, because it puts her in a situation where, like, well, they already gave this to me. Am I being ungrateful? Am I not, am I being ungrateful for like even asking for more? And to that, what I said to her is that, yes, you're absolutely right. It does take you're very grateful and you can be both grateful to them for the company to give you this raise. But at the same time, if it is not the number that you base on your research, based on the contribution that you've made the company have come up with, then you should absolutely insist on having that conversation. And something to kind of get over the fear of asking or seeming as you're asking for too much or that you're not grateful is asking yourself, what's the worst thing that will happen? If you're doing a great job, if you are a top performer, what is the worst thing that can happen if you are asking for what, based on your research, based on your preparation, you really want to ask for and where you think that you should be at? So I want to add that onto there. If you're thinking about asking, if you are trying to negotiate for a certain number, just ask yourself that, what's the worst thing that can happen for them to say no? And if they say no, then that's okay. You can go back and find somewhere in the middle. But I would say that absolutely ask for what you think you are and you should be at based on, again, your research.
Yeah, this is great, and especially the advice of thinking what the worst thing that can happen if they say no. I think in some negotiation books it's called best alternative to negotiated agreement. What happens if you don't get what you want? Do you have another job offering? Are you confident that you can go away and find a better option? Or are you okay with staying where you are and pretending nothing happened? Basically, those negotiation techniques can be very helpful, and there are great books about them. I think the most famous is Getting to Yes. It's a very easy book to digest, and it gives great advice for any negotiation, including the ones that we are talking about. We have a question for Kat. Kat, you mentioned that it's you have like responsibilities creep. You're taking more and more on yourself, and we all know by now that this is not always a good path to get onto, because it leads to burnout. So, did you have the conversation about it, and how did it went?
Yeah, so that's happened to me twice now. Both times I should have addressed it earlier than I did, because I definitely ended up just taking on more and more and more until I was pretty burned out, and I ultimately had the conversation with my manager out of just frustration. Like what I really wanted was to rescind my offer to do some of these things. But it turned out that they actually preferred me doing this auxiliary thing that I enjoyed more, admittedly. It just was too much with my actual defined job, and it resulted in just a title change. They just said, okay, well, here's more money and this title instead, because we feel like you're really, really valuable here, and we can find somebody else to do this other thing. But I wish I had kept a much closer eye on that situation and dealt with it before it became a source of frustration for me. So I'm definitely much, much more aware of where my lines are now.
Oh, I was on mute. Sorry, Kat. I said that was great, and I wonder if anyone else have similar experience with their to share about how to prevent more and more work piling up on your shoulders and actually bringing you to burnout, and how to prevent that.
Hi, Anna here. I can actually speak a little bit about that. I burned out really, really bad at my last workplace. Ended up in the hospital, due to working like 60-hour weeks, and a lot of it was because I was doing a lot on the front of like project ownership, engineering work, but I also went ahead and I got really involved with diversity and inclusion. And the company I was working for was a little bit on fire in the public setting for their lack of D&I efforts. So I was trying to be a little bit of a hero on the diversity and inclusion front. So for me, I like people were telling me, "Hey Anna, like be careful, you're getting too involved." And I was like, "No, it's okay. Like I feel like I want to speak up for this." So for me, sadly, it led to me burning out in the process of fighting for justice. But it made me realize that at some points you do need to prioritize what you value more. And for me, fighting for diversity and doing engineering work was very much of like running around with two torches on fire, hoping to not get burned. And I think being able to have those conversations with your manager, if you want to get involved in diversity and inclusion efforts, it's something that will come in handy. Being able to tell them like, hey, this is currently my experience at the organization. I would like to make things better for other underrepresented folks in the organization, but how is this actually going to be taken into account when we do go into promotions, when we're actually looking at what I contribute to the organization? So being upfront, being able to have metrics around the D&I work that you do, as good as you track your own engineering work and the impact that has, is able to help you have a little bit of a cushion in that burnout. But you do have to ask yourself, like, how many hours am I putting in? Am I getting good enough sleep? Am I really irritated with my friends, with my family? Have I stopped doing hobbies? And being able to answer those questions candidly with yourself and being really, really honest is a way to check in and see how close you are to burnout. And if you need to take a step back and actually focus on things that will get you to your next career goal, that's something that I wish folks would have told me a few years ago.
Thank you so much, Anna, for sharing that. This is super important, and obviously, be safe, everybody, and try not to burn yourself out because, as we know, not going to make you any good. We have another question, and it kind of related to what we spoke about when negotiating promotion, as opposite to negotiating during new hire, is how do we negotiate with friends? It's related to promotion because usually you speak with people you already know and trust, and it makes it much harder to make demands or make it much harder not to accept what they telling you just because of the relationship that you don't want to screw over. So how can we navigate through that, still get to what we want to achieve without hurt anybody's feelings, if you wish, or ruin relationships?
The way I handle this kind of relies on my assumption that other people handle this emotionally the same way I do, but I think of people in two different modes. Like, I really like my boss. I do. He's great. I would hang out with him. But currently, he is my boss, so he is not my friend. And I assume that he thinks of me in the same way. Like, we're chill. We can talk about stuff, but I'm not his friend because I'm his employee right now. So something that I think might bother a friend shouldn't bother my boss. My boss's ultimate responsibility is to the company we work for and to the rest of the team, and he has to make the best decisions for the company we work for and the team. And even if that's not necessarily in line with what he would do for me as a friend. So I just don't worry about whether or not asking my boss for a raise or making a demand about my responsibilities will hurt my relationship with him as a friend, because when I'm talking to him about that, we're in work mode and he has different responsibilities and priorities. But again, that only works because I've convinced myself that he has the same compartmentalization of relationships going on that I do. So if I let myself think, oh God, maybe he's in like friend mode all the time, then it falls apart. But I just convince myself otherwise.
That's good. That makes sense, and those boundaries are important. There are a lot of companies that actually insist to breaking them down and make sure that everybody are friends with everybody, and that can actually be counterproductive in the long run. So yeah, I'm with you here, Kat, and I think that um, even great work relationships are work relationships, and negotiation in the work relationship setting is perfectly fine, disagreement perfectly fine. We are not hurting everybody's feelings because our goal in the end of the day is being successful in our job and being successful for our companies. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Anyone else have something to add to that, or should we jump to a next question, which is kind of, yeah, okay, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying that something that we do here at Blockstack, when we come into most conversations, whether it's negotiation or anything, is coming from a place of good intentions. We do assume good intentions when we talk to our coworkers and when we talk even in a group, that even when we have disagreements, we always assume that the other side, the other person has good intentions. And I feel like, I think if I understand the question correctly, is how to negotiate with friends. Right. And I think to negotiate with friends, the first thing I think about is to assume that the other person will come from a place of good intention. And then I would do what I do with all conversations is to practice deep listening, to hear what the other person has to say, to hear what the other person's goals are, and then to keep that in mind. And then hopefully both sides will have the goal that it's going to be a win-win situation, rather than seeing it as like, okay, I must win, and in order for me to win, the other side must lose. I know that's a little bit theoretical, but maybe the most important takeaway is to assume good intention from both sides. Yeah, and I hope that your friendships have that, along with your relationship at work will have that too.
Yeah. I think that's on the same idea that everybody have the best intentions in mind, and this is how we can negotiate. Again, getting back to all the negotiation advices, and it might be a very good idea to get some background on that. I posted, by the way, the link for getting to yes in the chat, and I guess when it's going to go to YouTube, we'll make sure to post that in the notes as well. Another question, which is kind of what we actually discuss the entire panel, but maybe worth some crystallization and making it a separate question, is how do you go about handling this type of negotiation, both for hiring a new place or promotion, when you experience something like the imposter syndrome and you think that you are not worthy and you are afraid that you will be refused, which something that happens to all of us, but obviously much more significant for underrepresented minorities. So I bet you have great advice on that. Go.
I actually talk about imposter syndrome a lot. I graduated from a boot camp. I don't have a CS degree, and I was super insecure about that for a long time. So I talk to boot camp students about imposter syndrome pretty frequently. It is something that disproportionately affects women and underrepresented minorities. The best advice I've gotten on it is kind of twofold. First of all, I have a couple of friends that I trust just without question. Both of those friends are considerably smarter than me, and I don't mean that in a self-deprecating way. They just are. They never make me feel stupid about it, but they are just smarter than me. They know more about this than I do, and they always will. And they are there because I trust them to always tell me the truth about whether or not I am doing something stupid or just beating myself up over something I shouldn't be beating myself up on. So first of all, have somebody that you can trust, that you can really like be 100% honest with about your misgivings, and trust them to tell you whether or not you're making this harder for yourself than you really need to be. Also, I was once told to, when talking about myself, describe myself like a really over-supportive parent would. It's really awkward to hype yourself up, whether you're struggling with imposter syndrome or not. So think about yourself like an overenthusiastic parent would, or like your crazy supportive grandma. Just really gas yourself up with a grandma voice in the back of your head and talk about yourself like that. Just role play your grandma, and that makes it way easier.
This is great. I mean, it makes so much sense, and it also should be absolutely hilarious.
Hi, this is Anna. I can also speak on imposter syndrome. It's actually something I deal with very, very often. Like Kat, I also come from a very untraditional background. I taught myself how to code at a very young age. I decided to go to school for computer science, but I ended up dropping out. So for me, like navigating always like the job scene, like putting code out there, now giving like public talks has always been something that has made me really uncomfortable. But I think more than ever, it's something that I've had to try to embrace and be like, hey, I'm a badass. I've been able to make it this far without having this formal degree. With a lot of people have decided to go that route, and that's okay too. But for me, it didn't work out. So why should I feel like I need to put myself down because I didn't complete the same routine, the same journey that other folks had? What I bring to the table is as valuable as all these other folks. And then for what Kat was saying is like role playing with friends or just having a good support network of people that you really respect intellectually and in the industry that you're part of. and being able to have those conversations of like, hey, can you give me a little bit of a sanity check of what I'm asking for right now? Whether that's like talking about titles, pay, stock. And then I think I've never really embodied like the grandma part of things, but I always really try to embody like, let me treat myself like the same way that I hype up all my best girlfriends, and giving myself that same caring and love and acknowledgement of all the hard work that I've put in. That has helped me when I have to go in and have those fierce, hard conversations. And then sometimes being able to have a little bit of a control in the environment that you're having those conversations, it helps. So if you're doing these conversations while we're working from home, for me, like standing up is a lot easier for me to be more confident than me being able to like sit down. So being able to figure out what works best for you in order to be more confident, stronger, that's my key to success on any of this.
So it looks like we've lost Baruch. So I will just take over as master of ceremonies and let people know that this is the end. We've reached our time limit. I want to thank all of our panelists. And Baruch is back. So, hey, I was taking over because it seemed like you disappeared. But if you want to wrap things up, that would be awesome.
Yeah, so thank you for covering for me. For some reason, it all crashed. But now I'm back just to thank you. I think that was amazing. We got some very, very good advice on some very important topics. Money and compensation is important. So thank you for very much for doing that. I think it's all been recorded and will be posted later for future view, and everybody share it because money is important. So thank you very much again for all the panelists, and enjoy the rest of DevOps. Thank you and bye-bye.